Welcome everyone to the first bonus episode in the Jumpstart Into SQL program. Now this episode we're going to cover job selection and CV writing. The aim of everything then in this set of videos is to really get your CV prepped and up and running, make sure it's tailored for the right job role for you, and then we're going to cover a few extra bits and pieces, quite a lot of tips and tricks on what to do within your CV and also what an employer may be looking for within that CV as well. So we're going to cut this into 3 videos. So we're looking at, for the first video, the type of roles to search for, and that's in order to get the right job descriptions for you, find the right job for you at your level, so you can then prepare your CV, which will be covered in the second video. So in that video we'll be looking at the first page in a lot of detail, because this is obviously the very first thing that a potential employer sees on your CV, and then we'll go through the second and subsequent pages from there. And lastly, in the third video for this bonus episode, we're going to have a quick look at a CV from an employer's perspective, and we'll see what they think of your CV, see what goes through their minds potentially when they have a look at your CV when it comes across your desk. So let's move on to the first video, which is all about the types of roles and the examining of the job description. Okay then, so first of all, before you even begin to write your CV, you need to have a look at what jobs are actually out there. So we need to have a look at the sort of roles that are on offer from job sites, etc., etc. So when you do look for your roles, you probably want to start with a few broad search terms. Things like Data Analyst, Data Quality Analyst, Database Developer, and even Report Analyst are all good things to get you going with. Now you could find a variety of other jobs with different permutations of these sort of job searches. For example, I had a job as a data migration analyst, but obviously the keywords are still there, and quite often with a lot of these job searching sites, you put in the 2 words like data and analyst, and it will come up with a variety of roles involving those 2 words. So go general first of all, and then have a look what you get and see what the job descriptions are like for each individual job that pops up. Now, what I've also found is quite handy is to use words like junior or entry level in your search. So for example, you could be looking for junior data analyst or junior database developer. But again, it all depends in your country or in your region or wherever it is you're searching. Sometimes a junior role can actually be a database role requiring a year or 2 of experience. So maybe you could try entry level, for example, and that might bring it down to the right level. So the whole idea here is to gauge what sort of level the jobs out there are pitched at. And of course, I mentioned years of experience there, and that's a very, very good indicator of what sort of level they're and what sort of experience they're pitching their job description towards, what sort of individual they're requiring for their role. So entry level, they'll probably not require any years of experience, but they may require some skills in SQL or other technical skills. So again, years of experience is a good indicator of what sort of level the job is out there. And also check for mandatory requirements. if they're after a whole lot of skills in a variety of different packages and programs and apps, etc., that you don't have, that might be something for someone with a lot more experience than you have starting off. So, mandatory requirements, they could say things like SQL knowledge, base understanding of SQL and transact SQL, SQL programming, etc. And you can sort of kind of wing that with what you've covered on this course. So check those mandatory requirements, and if you clearly don't fill any of those, then make sure you pass that one up and move on to the next job that appears. Also, it's really good to set yourself up on a variety of recruitment sites that are out there, and especially the IT specific recruitment sites. Have a look around, get a feeler for what's around the place, and get yourself involved in there. It could be that you upload a sort of generic CV with your skills. You could speak to someone perhaps. They could have jobs ready to go that you've found that you can upload your CV to. You can also check on job boards, on social media, etc. Basically use all the resources at your disposal. You can even get yourself on professional sites such as LinkedIn, for an example. Make sure that all your details are uploaded, everything's up to date, and you'll find quite often that recruiters, when they search for specific buzzwords, your page, your profile might pop up, and they could actually send a potential job description to you to have a look at for a potential role. So basically cast your net as wide as you can initially, do a lot of broad searches, get yourself out there on as many recruitment sites as possible, and just keep on working at those roles. And always check the level, check the years of experience that's required, and any mandatory requirements. So once you've gone and searched for some roles, let's have a look and see the type of things to look for within those roles themselves. What we're going to do next then is we're going to have a quick look at the variety of job descriptions that I've actually applied for roles that I've gone for, all of which I've interviewed, 2 of which I didn't get the job, but the last one I'd somehow managed to get that. So we'll go through these 3 examples, we can see what's going on and take it from there. So the first job role that I went for, it was obviously a very high level for what I was bringing to the table, and I had a minimum of skills that were matching the job description. So let's check it out. So here we go. The role itself was advertised as a technical systems installer. Now obviously that doesn't sound very database related, but of course when I did a search we had SQL coming up for this role, etc. Querying scripts, transact SQL, experience working with data, and so on. So obviously this role did pop up, it was in my local area, so I decided to have a look at it and go for it. So obviously they then have an overview of what the role is all about. And there's quite a few things to consider there, quite a few things that I could do. So develop current installation procedures, working with a project environment to deliver systems on time, define standards. Obviously I didn't have any experience with that. Technical expertise to new clients, etc. Professional level of support. Well, I did work in customer service, so I suppose I could pretty much wing that one then. Analyze and develop current installation procedures. Well, as a team leader I was involved in a lot of writing of procedure manuals for the team and for the department, so I suppose I could have winged it there as well. Extract for data from existing systems, etc. Bit shaky on those, and as you can see from the first bit here, I had a few things that could sort of match, but most of these areas I didn't have any experience in it, really. Skills that you'll be working with, obviously experience working with data. Well, I work with data quite a lot, but all in Excel. SQL, minimal knowledge at best, pretty much non-existent, to be honest with you. But again, I was pretty much winging it with this one. No experience at any of these sort of things. However, it does say desirable, so that's a bonus, but it doesn't say you actually have to have those skills. And then of course the responsibility includes bits and pieces here, data manipulation, I suppose I did a bit of that, etc. But as you can see from these requirements here, although I did get the interview, I didn't actually have many of these skills here, so I didn't go forward for any second interview, and I certainly didn't get the job there, which is a good thing, because I certainly wouldn't have been able to do many of these sort of things. So that's the first job. Far too many skills that I clearly didn't have, and it was pitched at quite a high level. Experience of working with all these things tend to say they wanted someone with a few years of experience working with SQL and other applications under their belt. Let's have a look at the second job role I went for then. Again, this one was at quite a high level for my skills at the time. However, I did have several matching skills that I could work with, and I managed to get that interview with them. Let's have a look at the job description then. So this one was for a SQL database analyst. Pretty straightforward job title, mainstay of sort of SQL Server itself. You can see the pay range there, etc, etc. Now, skills and experience, they were after strong Microsoft SQL Server qualifications there and Transact SQL experience. Now, I had a smidgen of experience in these areas, obviously having learnt SQL Server 2008 and maybe touching on 2012, tiny bit of Transact SQL experience. So I was happy to go for an interview based on my semi-non-existent skills in those areas. However, what I really worked at was my Microsoft Excel, advanced formulas, data manipulation. I really worked that angle with this interview and with my cover letter and CV, etc. that I sent in for this role. And I'd say that's probably what got me in the interview in the first place, was my Excel skills. All of these sort of other areas, ability to work under pressure, etc., I managed to sort of tailor my CV to focus on these sort of areas, attention to detail, etc. Desirable, well, I had none of these desirable skills. However, I had worked on Salesforce, or with Salesforce, which is a CRM platform, so I suppose I had a little bit in this area here. However, when I got to the interview, although the interview went really well, and I was there for quite some time, the SQL test, which was extremely basic, so basic in fact that by failing that test, or not getting very far in that test at all, really highlighted my lack of SQL skills. So as you can see, this essential skill here, right at the top, is the key one for the role. And unfortunately, I was extremely lacking in these areas. Had I have done this course, then I would have aced quite easily any test that they threw at me, looking back and seeing what it was like. However, despite the fact that I was bringing in actually quite a lot of skills that they were after, I didn't get the role. And here's the email quickly for you, showing the response from the company. Basically, he gave the offer to another candidate, and he's therefore no longer looking. He said if that candidate hadn't emerged, however, he would have seriously considered offering the role to me if, of course, the test has gone well. So my lack of SQL, even the most basic of SQL, is what let me down during this interview, because they loved everything else I was bringing to the table. So that was the second job role, which was again too high a level. However, I did have a lot of matching skills which carried me through to the interview and also during the interview itself. But once again, my lack of SQL skills really let me down there. So, on to job role number 3, which was pitched at the right level and had several matching skills. Let's have a look at that job description then. So this was for a data and migration analyst. So the responsibilities were pretty straightforward. Project management, data migration. As you can see, there's no sort of requirement for strong SQL skills. Interaction with customers throughout the migration process. Retrieve data from clients' existing systems via remote software and FTP. Again, something I'd never been involved in, but it's just a simple skill that can be taught. Map, check, validate, migrate the data. So that boils down to attention to detail pretty much. Version new formats and data mapping where required. So once again, while it's all about data, there isn't a massive emphasis on SQL Server itself. As you can see on the essential skills and experience, they have a vast amount talking about attention to detail, work on concurrent systems, etc., projects under pressure, meeting deadlines, and a lot of strong communication skills. And this is one area that's becoming more and more important. No longer a coder just sitting behind computer screens, typing away. You've got to basically interact with people at all levels. And somewhere near, down to the bottom, essential skills and experience was understanding of MySQL and MS SQL Server. Now, though I had an extremely basic understanding of SQL Server at the time, I was extremely strong on just about every other aspect there, especially working knowledge of Microsoft Office programs such as Excel and Word, etc. Excellent analytical skills, and I was able to prove that from a lot of the work I had done within Excel, sending out reports for management, etc. So I really worked the other technical skills and of course the soft skills such as communication and so on that are becoming more and more important as time goes on. So that's the role that I did get, and it was a very basic entry-level role. As you can see, there's no years of experience that they're after. They were simply after the right person to work in their team. And once you're there, they'll train you up and teach you all the bits and pieces you needed to do that job. So that's about it for those different job descriptions. That's just a snapshot of my journey when I first started on my SQL career, how things were quite difficult for me to sort of ascertain the right level to begin with. Quite a few failures at the beginning. I had sent out quite a lot of CVs to different places. I didn't get any interviews. I managed to get one and a second one, but they were just too high level and my skills were not up to the required standards. But I kept on going, I kept on looking, and the Data and Migration Analyst popped up, came along, and I thought, well, I believe that I have 70%, in fact probably more than 70% of what they're after in that job description, so I went for it and I got the role, and that was the beginning of my SQL journey. Brilliant stuff. So that's it, everyone, for the first video, where we had a look at the type of roles that you should be searching for, and of course examining the job descriptions for the ones you're keen on. Join me then in the second video, where we go through the actual CV writing process itself. So once you've found that job role that you're keen to apply for, we're going to give you all the skills and the confidence necessary to write your CV and apply for that role. Until then, everyone, I wish you all a fantastic day.